one thing to note, he did do every single interview with his shirt off.
In the run game, put my paws on people.
Welcome everyone. I just got back from the Senior Bowl a few weeks ago, and I was able to cover the event with media credentials, joined by Drew and Joe. And with that information, we are going to be giving our biggest sleeper from the event. I'll start off with my guy, Damian Martinez, running back out of Miami. And Martinez is a guy that I watched a bit leading up to the Senior Bowl. But when I watched him closing up person, he just really, really turned my attention. I mean, I absolutely love Martinez. I saw a little bit of his game on tape, and once I got to the Senior Bowl, I mean, he looked the part, 5'11", 226 pounds, but he moved extremely well for being that big. I mean, he showcased 3-down size, and he looked quick with the ball in his hands. And lastly, he just really impressed me as a pass catcher. I mean, typically guys that are that big, unless they are one of the premium, top elite workhorse bell cows in the NFL, that's not what you're expecting out of these guys that aren't getting the top hype, like Ashton Genty, like Omarion Hampton. But Martinez is a guy that is a similar build to those players, but he's a sleeper. You're able to get him in the late to mid second round of most rookie drafts. I expect that to continue for most of the offseason. And as a runner as well, had great feet, essential for a guy with his frame, has a ton of power in his game, being, 5'11", 226 pounds. He knows how to use it. And on top of that, I mean, he just looks so explosive for his size. Martinez is a guy that I think has 3-down upside, and I love getting the chance to watch him work up close at the Senior Bowl.
It's a great one to kick off on. And keeping the theme going of running backs we saw down in Mobile, I'm gonna go with Devin Neal. This is a guy I've wanted to mention him a couple times in our past mocks, and I never did. I was rotating around my other later round running backs. He's actually worked his way up to my RB5. You watch this guy's tape. He looks and he certainly moves like about 190. That's about what I expected him to weigh in at, mid 190s. This dude came into Mobile at a solid 220. He measured in awesome. The vision is incredible. He jump cuts like he's 190. The guy just floats around the field. He's so elusive, solid in the receiving game. Got some PPR upside for him too. Not the best blocker, especially compared to some of these other guys in this class. So he might struggle to get on the field a little bit as a rookie, but I think he's a good enough pure runner and a weapon in the receiving game to earn his way on the field. He was some of the most enjoyable tape of any prospect that I've watched so far in this draft. He's super polarizing, really elusive. Just one of my favorite strong runners in this class.
Yeah, totally. I'm a big Neil fan. I was coming in to the Senior Bowl, and I got the chance to talk to him as well down there. He's a really good dude. Great to talk to him. But moving off the running backs, I'm gonna go with a tight end to start. This one is a bit of a deeper sleeper, I think, but I think one of the themes of the Senior Bowl that we saw was kind of the recognition of how deep this tight end class really is. There were several tight ends that were able to stand out that we can't mention all of them today, but if we could, we would. The guy I'm going to go with is Georgia Tech's Jackson Hawes. He had a fantastic week. What really stuck out to me, personally, I love guys at the tight end position that can block really well and receive the ball really well. He was really good in the blocking drills, maybe one of the best tight ends there, consistently stonewalling linebackers and edge rushers. He looks really good in the scrimmage drills as well, not just the one-on-ones. But then as a receiver, showed the ability to separate, not only in the one-on-ones, but the scrimmage drills, caught a couple touchdowns. And he was one of my favorite players to watch every week. Every time the ball came his way, he was going to catch it, consistently separating. He's a big dude, too, so that's a tough thing to ask. But he is one of my deepest sleepers at the tight end position. I think at the end of your rookie drafts, he could be a guy that could develop into a starting tight end. Pretty surprisingly that he goes that late. But again, just a fantastic blocker, could work his way onto the field that way, and then be given receiving opportunities based off of that. So blocking is definitely not a skill to sleep on in Dynasty, but he does both those really well. He's a really fun guy to watch. And I think if you're getting him late in Dynasty drafts, he could be a steal.
I mean, the running back position, we already knew that was deep. But, I mean, heading down and getting to see these players, what stuck out to me was just how deep this tight end class is. You obviously have Hawes, a ton of other guys top of the crop like Harold Fannin, my guy, of course, but also just Mason Taylor. I mean, there's so many other names. Elijah Arroyo, who could or could not be on this sleeper video as well. We'll dive more into him in a minute, but I'm going to talk about a wide receiver out of Illinois, and that's going to be Pat Bryant. So this wide receiver class is pretty slot heavy. You obviously have Ted McMillan. You have Jayden Higgins as your bigger outside receivers, but once you go down the list a bit, you're not going to find a whole bunch of guys that can play the X position in the NFL. Pat Bryant at 6'2", 208 pounds definitely can, in my opinion. Great as a deep threat. I think that's what he was. That's what he was really used as in college at Illinois. They were throwing the ball up to him in the red zone, contested catch monster. They just, because he was so good at that, and because Illinois, it's no secret they don't have the best football team. I mean, the quarterback play with Luke Altmaier's fine for college, but far from a real NFL quarterback prospect. It was a little bit of a one-dimensional game, and the question to answer at the Senior Bowl was that because of the offense or was that because of Bryant? And the answer to that, in my opinion, was it was just because of the Illinois offense. I mean, Bryant in these drills moved so fluidly, so quick getting in and out of these cuts, finished plays with reliable hands. And the knock against him is he's not really going to be a track star. He doesn't have great NFL speed. He's not the most athletic receiver, so he doesn't have the same upside as some of these top guys, but he can do so much more than just, being a deep threat. I mean, he is a great with the ball in contested catch categories. He can win in the intermediate part of the field. He cooked defenders in the one-on-ones. I mean, very fluid, very quick feet. I think that he has the fundamentals and ability to be a very good wide receiver too at the NFL level.
Yeah, definitely. Bryant was a guy I didn't know a ton about going into the week, but he absolutely impressed me. Not only in the one-on-one drills, in scrimmage as well, and like you said, looks super fluid, especially in the red zone drills. But a good route runner, and I think that's a good pick for sleepers.
For sure, absolutely. He's been one of my guys for a while in this class. I think he's going to be limited a little bit from that top end athleticism. I don't know how much room there is to grow there over the top, but a guy that beats press like he does at his size, that's always going to be a guy with a role in the NFL. Go back to something Steve kind of teased earlier, Elijah Arroyo, which honestly I don't even know if he qualifies for a sleeper at this point because of how good of a week he had in Mobile. Anybody that did know his name, they definitely do now. And I mentioned him at the very end of our last mock, I believe. The only thing keeping this guy back on my board and most people's boards that I've talked medical concerns. There's some injury concerns. We'll see how that shakes out after combine and combine interviews and teams find that stuff out. But this guy, he's unreal athlete at his size. He moves like a slot receiver, separates consistently against nickel DBs, linebackers, whoever. He's a constant matchup nightmare. Awesome at the catch point. And for a guy who is deemed as that, receiving tight end, the big slot receiver, like we see so many of, like Harold Fannin. But the Arroyo, for a guy that gets labeled that way, he has some pop in his hands. I would not be surprised to see him go at the top of the second round in the NFL draft, maybe even earlier, depending on how he tests, how the medicals shake out. But he's tight end 3 for me, and he's there's not that much of a gap between the top two guys. He's a fun prospect. I love him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I watched Arroyo's film right before we went to the Senior Bowl, and the first thing that stuck out to me was his blocking. So absolutely, he can carve out that role in an NFL offense. Moving on to my next sleeper, again, going with a pretty relatively unknown guy. I'm going to go with Delaware's Marcus Yarns, a running back. And I'll tell you what, the only good thing about my flight getting overbooked and not being able to go to Mobile for a whole day was sitting in the airport the next day and stumbling across this dude's film because he is the definition of a home run hitter. I mean, his speed is ridiculous. He showed that at the Senior Bowl. He's an underrated receiver as well. In those one-on-one drills against the linebackers, he was consistently getting separation and showing natural hands like a lot of the running backs did that week. But like I said, home run hitter. He's got fantastic speed and acceleration, and he even did it against a team like Penn State in 2023. He knocked out a 60-yard touchdown that looked fantastic on tape. That was the game I was able to watch. But I think if he can get into maybe like an RB running back 1B or running back 2 role on an NFL offense, maybe that change of pace guy, he could definitely come in as that big play threat that can threaten you with his speed, his acceleration, and just change the pace of an entire NFL offense. So he's probably not going to go super high. Again, there's a ton of running backs to get drafted this year, and I really don't know where his landing spot could be. But if he tests really well, and if he starts flying up draft boards, I think he's a guy that could be a steal in rookie drafts. And he may not even get drafted in rookie drafts. If you were able to pick him up off of waivers afterwards, he's a great stash. I just think he's a good prospect and someone with a really high ceiling, maybe a lower floor. But at this point, if you're taking him off of waivers after a rookie draft, I think that's a good stack to have. So I'm going with Yarns.
Yeah, Yards. And I want to be careful with my comps here. I'm not saying he will be this player, but when I comp somebody, it's just similarities in their game. I see a ton of Devon Achane and Marcus Yarns. He's one of those guys. And again, this is gonna sound like an insult. I promise it's not. Just comp and play styles. Is really Banacanda. Guys like that, where they're not gonna get you 3 yards in a cloud of dust in between tackle guys. They're gonna break 1-2 runs per game, and they're both gonna go for 70 yards. I mean,
Yep.
these are guys to get for low risk. They're gonna have weeks out of nowhere of huge production. See a lot of Devon Chain in him.
I love the Izzy shout too because he was a pretty good prospect that I liked as well. He's just a guy that, I mean, that's what Yarns could be. I mean, Izzy went to a terrible situation with the Jets. Obviously, having Brees Hall, I mean, loaded running back room, that could definitely happen. But, I mean, if Yarns or, say, Izzy had gone to a better spot where he just kind of, running backs get injured at a high clip in the NFL, found himself thrust into that running back 2 role, got on the field a bit, yeah, I mean, I think he could definitely break some runs and give you some fantasy production. But I'll stick with a running back and kind of go with a guy that I'd honestly forgotten about. And in years prior, he was getting propped up by his name. But after the horrendous season that Travis Etienne put up, I think it's knocking him down more than anything. And that's Trevor Etienne out of Georgia. I honestly kind of forgot about this guy. He went to Florida, transferred to Georgia. Georgia didn't have the season that many expected, so we didn't really get to see him on the national spotlight quite as much. But Etienne, similar to his brother, is a guy that just wins as a receiver. Fantastic. We saw him dominate in the one-on-one drills really every single day. There were multiple plays that really just caught my eye. I mean, he had a fantastic spinning catch. He made unbelievable plays on the ball. He just looked like a wide receiver playing running back. You put him in a matchup with a linebacker, and it's really just not fair. Not just running basic routes as well and getting checkdowns. I mean, he has a very good route tree, which will translate to PPR points at the NFL level and for fantasy football. He's a guy that's similar to Yarns. I think he's going to be drafted a bit higher. I think he's going to be probably more of a 5th round pick, but still not going to get crazy draft capital just because he's never been a fantastic runner. He's kind of that guy that is a bit more efficient, has a bit more pop, but can't really handle a ton of carries even at the college level. With that being said, one of the easiest way to hit on a guy late in rookie drafts is get a guy with PPR upside, because if they can get that role, get that 3rd down upside, they're already giving you a solid floor for how cheap of a price you're getting them. Now they get a few more carries, they build a bit more of a repertoire with their offense, and suddenly they're a low-end RB2, and you got them in the 3rd, 4th round of Dynasty rookie drafts.
Yeah, absolutely. To continue on Steve's point of PPR upside, and just to kind of round out this round of running backs here, LaQuint Allen out of Syracuse is PPR upside embodied. He's one of the most impressive running backs in as far as like route tree and hands goes, and like receiver skills that I've ever watched. I mean, he's so polished at that. There's a lot of room to improve as a runner. I'd like to see him work on the vision, the contact balance, the fundamentals you want to see as a runner. But that's why you're getting this guy, at a virtually no risk. You're probably a waivers guy.
Yeah, for sure. Allen looked really good over the week in Mobile. He was one of the best running backs there. I think he performed really well over the field. But my next guy is going to be Terrence Ferguson. I'm actually doing a video for the channel dedicated to him, his film study. He looks really good in Mobile. Obviously, I've talked about how the tight end room looked really good, and it looks like a really deep class for tight ends. But Ferguson out of Oregon, I think he's a really good open field blocker, and that could work him onto the field in an NFL offense. But he's also a really good receiver after the catch. I think that's one of the most underrated parts of his game, and I think he'd be one of the most or maybe not one of the most, but one of the more dynamic tight ends with the ball in his hands in the NFL. He may be a later rookie draft pick, but I think he's worth a pick in the later rounds. I think he could be that guy to be a surprise starter for an NFL offense week 1 and make a really good rookie season out of his first year. So good as a blocker, good as a receiver. Like I said, I love tight ends like that. He fits right into that category. He's a decent athlete as well, and I think he's a good route runner. So I think Terrence Ferguson could be a real sleeper at tight ends in rookie drafts.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, like you said, he doesn't really have super plus upside as a receiver, and he's not a unreal blocker either. So that's why he's going to be pushed down boards, especially for fantasy. But I think an NFL team could definitely love him. They want just a replacement level type tight end. I think he could slide into a starting spot easily, which obviously would give him a huge bump for Dynasty Fantasy Football. For our last player here, for my last player at least, I'm going to talk about a guy that's still being slept on a bit more than I think, he should be, even though he's one of the more well-known names on this list. And that's going to be Jayden Higgins. He is my personal wide receiver 5 in the class, right there with Restrepo. I'm going back and forth with them each day, essentially. But Higgins measured in 6'3", 217, so he's one of the other players. I talked about Pat Bryant. I think he's a bit more polished. I think he's ready to contribute. Had more college production than Bryant, so he's going to get better draft capital as well. But he's a guy that he kind of struggled to separate down the field. But what really popped out for me was he was able to get open in the middle of the field, and he showed good route running skills and also good agility for being a bigger guy. I don't want to say that I don't want to throw the Drake London combo out there because that's a pretty big upside chase. But again, like Drew said, we're talking about this stylistically. I think that he has upside, and you're getting him in the mid to late second round again. So he also has a pretty high floor, in my opinion. I think that he could be a Michael Pittman as well. Back when he had value and wasn't playing injured for the entire season, which I'm sure Joe can attest to.
Yep.
But I think he should be a likely day 2 pick. He's a big guy that not only can win in the red zone, but he also is nuanced as a route runner, beyond his size. And that's a guy that I'm willing to take a shot on in the mid-second round of my Dynasty rookie drafts.
Yeah, Higgins, one of my comps for him, like you said, was a faster Michael Pittman Jr. Obviously, Pittman, played injured the whole year, definitely hurt his stock. But Higgins, I think, like you said, perfectly. High floor receiver. He's got a big frame and knows how to use it, so I'm a big fan of his, and I'll be looking to draft him in the second round.
Yeah, absolutely. There were a couple guys that made me kind of reevaluate how I looked at their tape with how they looked down in Mobile, but none of them were as stark a difference as Higgins was. I thought he looked the most improved out of any prospect in person compared to on their tape. Normally, I'm a pretty anti, big possession receiver guy. I like the smaller the separators. But Higgins, his feet, his release packages, the separation ability were all improved twice over in person than anything I saw on film. So I think that's a guy I'm starting to get a lot higher on than I originally was. So I really like that pick. And similar to what I was saying about Arroyo, I don't know if this counts as a sleeper anymore with how awesome of a week this guy had. But Jack Bech, I talked about him at the end of our last. Well, I have been screaming this guy from the rooftops for weeks pre-Senior Bowl too. A little brag there. TCU on both TCU guys. I love those guys. But Jack Bech, I mean, he's built like a tight end. You look at that guy. There's no chance he's a receiver. Built so solid, but he doesn't move like one. Moves like a slot receiver. He played inside out. A lot of versatility with how he played in TCU. He had no issues at all beating press, which again, any guy that's big like that can beat press is going to be high on my board. I love that. Limited athletically, kind of in a similar vein as a lot of guys we talked about so far. But he's a good, savvy route runner, especially like I said, for his size. Great blocker. Unreal at the catch point. Guy just didn't have a shot. His ball tracking, his body control, he knows how to box guys out at a tiny little compact frame like he has. So I mean, yeah, this is a guy that's shooting up people's boards, rightfully so. There's a lot to like there. I think he's a really solid second or third round option.
Yeah, for sure. Bech did win the MVP of the Senior Bowl, and one thing to note, he did do every single interview with his shirt off.
Just come out here in the run game, put my paws on people.
So if you want a guy that's really intense, gonna bring that presence to your locker room, that'll do it. But yeah, good shout out to Jack Bech. I'm gonna go with my last guy, Jaylin Noel, another Iowa State receiver. Actually, kind of cool to have two of them up here. But yeah, he looked fantastic. One of the most impressive receivers the entire week. Mostly in the one-on-one drills, he shined. A couple really nice routes on the sideline, even though his role could project to be more of a slot guy. But again, really advanced route runner for where he's at right now, and absolutely shot up draft boards. He wasn't even on my radar that much coming into this, but I mean, looked amazing on the field in the one-on-ones, destroying really good corners there at the Senior Bowl. So I think maybe drifting into that third round, maybe late second round range if you want to take a shot on him, if you really believe in the tape. But he's definitely a guy I would be looking at more tape of as the draft comes up. But really impressive showing at the Senior Bowl and put himself on a lot of draft radars. So look for a landing spot for him on draft day. But again, really impressive.
Yeah, I thought Noel was incredibly shifty. Another guy that I thought looked a little bit better on tape. Both those Iowa State guys. He was really shifty. I think, again, he's kind of in the same vein as Burden that I've talked about on here a couple times. I think he probably could play on the outside if a team asked him to, but I don't know if they will. They've only lot. So I think his footwork is incredible. The release packages are great. You have to show it off because of how much he's stuck in the slot. But I think he's a guy with a great skill set, great athlete. Not the biggest frame in the world, but those guys, the smaller frame guys are thriving right now. Tank Dell, Tez Johnson, who had a great week. They're on the up and coming. It's not it doesn't really rule you out like it did in the old NFL.
No, for sure. Noel's a guy that I loved as well, and we were talking about this before, but like you said, a slot guy at his price, I don't think that's a really big knock because you're not asking him to be a wide receiver one, you're asking him to be a wide receiver two, and that's a big difference. I like him. I like that comp to Burden we were talking about before, where he probably could play outside. I just have questions about his physical frame, him being 5'9", 196 pounds. Official at the Senior Bowl might limit him from being physically capable to do it at the NFL level. Even though his skill set probably in college he could have done it a bit more if Jayden Higgins wasn't so dominant. But with that being said, that's going to wrap up things up for the video. Big thank you to you guys for allowing us to cover the event down in Mobile. It was a blast. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. We're planning on doing a mock draft soon. I know you guys love that with our updated rankings, updated thoughts from the Senior Bowl. But again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.